All right, we've been talking about how to solve quadratics, and today we're going to spend a day talking about how to choose a method. So basically, what we've really been focusing on is two methods, how to solve equations either by factoring them or by using the quadratic formula. And what we want to do today is decide, if we just look at an equation by itself that we have to solve, how do we know what to do? Do we factor it or do we use the quadratic formula? Now, before we even start, I just want to say it doesn't matter which way you're solving. The first step is always to make the equation equal to 0, because both methods, solving by factoring or using the quadratic formula, only work if the equation is equal to 0. All right, so let's start with solving by factoring. What's good about it is it's faster. It's the quickest, fastest way to solve. If you get good at factoring, where you can look at it and just go, okay, yeah, it's x plus this times x minus that, then you solve by just changing the numbers on your factors and you're done. Now, what's bad about it is it doesn't always work. Not every equation is factorable. And the other thing I think is bad about it is that it's harder when there's a number in front of x squared. Factoring's not too bad if it's just x squared, but if it's like a 3x squared or a 5x squared, it makes it a much harder problem. Now, as far as quadratic formula, what's good about it is it always works, no matter what. In fact, that's what's best about quadratic formula. If I give you a quadratic equation and ask you to solve it, you can use the quadratic formula, period, no matter what. But what's bad about it is it takes more time and more work to do that. Factoring is a quicker and easier way to do it. So you gotta have this balance. You don't wanna, always do one and always do the other. It's better to really think about it and decide the best method for each one. So here's the summary. Each one of you needs to decide what's best for you. I'm not going to sit here today and tell you the best way of doing it is this, 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 and this, because that may not be what's best for you. So you have to decide what's best for you. Now, some people actually just do quadratic formula every time because it always works. Then they don't even have to worry about it. Now, the benefit of that is that you don't even have to think about it. You just see a quadratic and you go, okay, I'm going to do negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. But what's bad about it is it takes more time. And maybe an assignment that I gave you that I meant to take like 20 minutes for factoring ends up taking you an hour. Other people always try factoring first. Every time they see an equation, they go, okay, let's try factoring. That's the quick and easy way. And then they try factoring, and if it doesn't work, then they use quadratic formula. All right, that's something else you guys can consider. Now here are some hints. Number one, remember we learned the discriminant earlier this week. The discriminant can actually tell you if it's factorable. So if you want, you can do b squared minus 4ac. If you get a perfect square, then you go, hey, it's factorable. Let's forget about that and just go back and factor it. But if you do b squared minus 4ac and don't get a perfect square, then you go, it's not factorable. I'm not even going to waste time trying. I'm going to go straight to the quadratic formula. And then one last little hint for you guys. When there's a number in front of the x squared, I mentioned this earlier, factoring is much harder. You can do it, but I actually didn't even go over it with you guys. So I think for us, anytime there's like a 2x squared or a 3x squared or an 8x squared, it's probably best for now to just go ahead and use the quadratic formula. So let's do two examples together. Here's the first one. Solve for x. We have 3x squared plus 2x minus 2 equals 0. And the two things I notice first are, number one, it's already equal to 0. That's good. I don't have to do anything there. Once I realize that, I look at the equation itself. I see this 3 here. And I say, well, you know what? This thing might be factorable, but I don't really like factoring when there's that 3 there anyways. So let's go straight to the quadratic formula. If I want to solve this by the quadratic formula, I have a equals 3, I have b equals 2, and c equals negative 2. And I'm going to do the quadratic formula. X equals negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And let's start putting some numbers in. Negative b means the opposite of b. b was positive 2, so I'm going to start with a negative 2. And then inside the square root, we have b squared, that would be 2 squared, minus 4 times a, which is 3, times c, which is negative 2, and it's all over 2 times a, which is 3. So remember when we were evaluating the quadratic formula, I said leave the negative 2. You can do the part on the bottom, 2 times 3 is 6, that's easy. But take that square root part and do it separately. Don't try to do the whole thing all at once. So maybe you grab a calculator and you type it all in, and it comes out to, let's see, that would be 4 plus 24, it would be square root of 28, which if you did it on a calculator, would actually reduce it to 2 radical 7. And remember, you're allowed to do that. I don't need you to do that work in your head or on paper or anything. You're allowed to just type that mess into the calculator, let it reduce it for you. So it comes out to 2 radical 7. So this is the point, if you remember the first time we did quadratic formula, I said, if this were a homework assignment and you just box that up, I would accept it. I mean, it's the right answer. But if this was a multiple choice test, that might not be the answer because it can actually be simplified a little bit. So I said the way we simplify it, take the part on top, the negative 2 plus or minus 2 radical 7, and put them over the denominator separately. So split them up and put each one over the 6 separately, and then reduce each one. Negative 2 over 7 would reduce to negative 1/3. Can't even see that. Let's get a better color. Negative 1/3. Plus or minus, and now the same thing over here. You're always reducing the number part. You don't reduce the radical part. So we'll call it, that would be 1/3 also. So maybe we'll call it 1/3 radical 7, or you could call it radical 7 over 3. That would be fine too. Radical 7 over 3. So really, any of these, the white or the green in the box, are the right answer. But if this was a multiple choice test, this one right here is the one you'd be looking for. But going back to the beginning, I picked quadratic formula because I saw that 3 there. And I said, I don't really want to try and factor with that 3 there. Okay, let's do one more example. Same setup. I have solve for x, 2x squared plus 6x minus 16 equals not 0. So right off the bat, before I can even think about, don't think about quadratic formula or factoring right now, because before that step, that needs to be a 0. And to make that a 0, I'm going to subtract x squared from both sides. Let's line it up under the x squared over here and cancel that out. 2x squared minus 1x squared is 1x squared, or just x squared. We'll leave everything else, plus 6x minus 16, and now it does equal 0. So now we're good here, that checks out. And also, I got rid of the number in front of x squared. Back at the original problem, when you looked up here, you saw that 2, and you might have been thinking to yourself, oh, I'm going to have to use quadratic formula again. I see a 2 there, I'm not going to factor. Well, we got rid of that 2. And actually, I think I am going to try this one by factoring. So I'm going to take that negative 16, and I'm going to see if I can find 2 numbers that multiply together to give me negative 16 and add up to give me positive 6. Now, the first few times we did this, I made a list of all the numbers. Right now, I'm just going to start kind of running through them in my head. I'm going to go like 1 times 16, 2 times 8, and I go, oh, well, wait, how about, what if I did negative 2 times positive 8? Because negative 2 times positive 8 is negative 16, and negative 2 plus negative 8 is positive 6. It's exactly what I'm looking for right here. So this is factorable. I found the numbers. The numbers are minus 2 and plus 8. And then remember, we have that nice, neat shortcut. Now, to solve, all you got to do is change the signs on those numbers. Since my first factor was x minus 2, my first answer is positive 2. And since my second factor is x plus 8, my second answer is x is negative 8. So you can see how factoring is less work. You know, once I got to this point right here and I was ready to solve, if I tried quadratic formula, it would have taken a lot more work to get those same answers. Factoring is definitely the quicker and easier way when it is factorable. But remember, if you went over here and you couldn't find two numbers that multiplied to -17 and added up to +6, then you would have to go back and use quadratic formula. And that's where we are right now. We know two different ways of solving quadratics, and we want to take a look at each question and really think about what's the best way to do it.